On this episode of Design to Thrive, we sit down with Richard Howard of IC Medical, the company that literally invented surgical smoke evacuation as we know it today. From Cold War immigration stories to breakthrough MedTech inventions still used around the world. This is more than business, it's legacy. If you've never thought about what's in surgical smoke, you will after this. Welcome to Design to Thrive. We have a special guest. His name is Richard from IC Medical. Welcome, Richard.
Welcome. Thanks for having me.
Welcome. Let's get to it. So, how did IC Medical get started, and what's the origin story?
So it's a very fascinating story, actually. Jan Cosmescu founded the business. He and his wife, Elena Cosmescu, they are from Romania. And honestly, Jan's been an inventor since he was a little boy. And most of this is in his book here. This is Jan here. This book was published about 2 years ago, but they immigrated to the United States in the early 1980s from Romania. The U.S. Embassy lobbied with the Romanian embassy to have him relocated to the United States. And it was because of his ingenuity and his inventive ingenious would seem to be the rationale for that, though he never really did understand why. No full disclosure from the U.S. government why they wanted him here so badly. But looking back, it was certainly a good decision. I can explain more on that. I mean, honestly, his wife is a nurse by trade. He worked at St. Joseph's Hospital in the clinical engineering biomedical department and continued his inventions, and his exposure to things in the hospital led Jan to decide he could improve upon the way they were doing surgery, safety in the operating room, and that sort of led to the incorporation of IC Medical and the development of the smoke evacuation technologies that are still in use across the world today.
Okay. So, what inspired the focus of surgical smoke evacuation?
I think it was just working in the operating room and being exposed to the way they were doing laser surgery. I mean, at the time, surgical smoke was really only attributed or given much attention during laser surgery, specifically in some cosmetic, but most predominantly when doing laser papilloma removal due to its high contagious nature, being that you're dealing with, papilloma virus. So, Jan had a great fascination with both lasers and, with the evacuation of the smoke itself, and putting the two together, developed the current technology, which is a very, very ingenious invention. Still to this day, I believe that IC Medical's technology is paramount to any competing technology in the world.
So, smoke evacuation, and it's related to surgeries mostly. Who's your target client and niche that you're going after for using these types of devices?
That's a good question. I mean, any surgery that's performed in the world where they're using any type of energy device, especially if it's a thermal energy, being high frequency electrosurgery, bipolar electrosurgery, lasers, of course, and other types of cutting devices like let's say harmonic scalpel, ultrasonic devices, and anything that does cutting. Certainly the higher energy, the more electro frequency that's running through it, you're going to have more smoke production. But cooler devices like harmonic scalpels and things, there's still a plume, a bioaerosol that's produced, and a high suction device used or implemented right at the source of the production of that smoke or plume will certainly mitigate and prevent spread of infection, cross-contamination, and airborne occupational exposure to the smoke and the plume.
And are you guys global right now, or just based in the United States?
No,
Primarily?
global company has been the gold standard in many countries across the world for decades.
Do you guys have any competitors?
Oh yes. I had the pleasure of being directly employed by one of those direct competitors for about 16 years. And there's 4 major competitors in the United States. Globally, those same 4 have a presence globally as well. And then there's several other competing companies in depending on which region you're looking at.
Okay. So, what's something surprising about your industry most people don't know?
Wow. About surgical smoke evacuation in specific, I think one of the the hazards that there's a fair amount of education out there, and education continues to increase, especially as legislation is passed in the United States requiring it. Currently, I believe in 18 states have passed and ratified legislation. A half dozen others have legislation running through the state legislature now for passage. There's a few nations in the country that have standards that govern it. Denmark being the first nation to make it required nationally. But some things that the education is still relatively weak and not really. There's a lot of elements to surgical smoke hazards that are not well documented. I think at the top level, the easy way to discuss the hazard or to quantify the known hazard is to state that the smoke contains all the same chemicals as cigarette smoke, for which the hazards are well documented, right? So, I mean, that's sort of irrefutable. Nobody's going to say, well, cigarette smoke, that's not a hazard. I mean, everybody knows that. But what's unknown, to answer your question more poignantly, is some of the extrinsic hazards to the smoke that are not as quantifiable. For instance, potential spread of infection, retrograde infections using suction devices that are, going through wall suction lines or even the smoke evacuators, the ocular exposure to the smoke. If we're not wearing eye protection in the OR and that plume's going airborne, what is the hazard there? What about the spread of that smoke across the operating room if we don't grab all of it? What about contaminating other pieces of equipment? How about the smoke evacuators themselves? What are the likelihood of those pieces of equipment becoming contaminated with any type of ingress of fluid or plume or debris going inside the machine and reusing that? um, and then the patient, there's potential hazards to the patient that I don't believe are quite well documented. Some of them are well documented in laparoscopy, but some open surgeries, if you have smoke going in the air after a C-section and a baby's born and they breathe in the smoke, what does that mean? How about the significant other standing in the room and they breathe it? And if that patient happened to have some type of skin infection or something that gets sent airborne, can that spread to patients? Can it spread to other people in the room? Right? They found surgical site infection, like a port site metastasis in patients where the cancer that they were cutting open and then it reformed at the port site and they attribute that potentially to the smoke. So there's a lot of potential hazards to surgical smoke that are really just not that well quantified and well documented to be understood properly.
Beautiful. So the pen itself, it captures the plume.
Yes, yes. In open surgery, the pen itself will capture the plume.
Okay. Now, do you have any "we made it" moments that you'd like to share?
IC Medical invented the smoke evacuation pencil as it is today. For, obviously patents only last so long and eventually they expire and every competitor's out there. And I remember working for a competitor and we were scrambling to find a way around to circumvent the patent. But, Mr. Kosmescu, this fine gentleman here, this fine gentleman here, he's an amazing man, by the way. He is extremely. I couldn't even use a word to describe him. You'd have to meet him yourself. Very intriguing, very colorful yet calculated, and a genius clearly. But the company invented the smoke evacuation pencil as you know it today, and still, 35 years later, the invention, the technology, it's still the best made pencil. All of our products are manufactured here in the United States of America. No offense to the rest of the world. God bless the whole world, right? But in today's climate, the decision was made years ago to remain made in America. All products are made in the United States. And to my knowledge, it's the only smoke evacuation pencil that is made here in the United States. So we take great pride in that. And again, invented the technology, 35 plus years ago.
35 years is a long time.
Fair
What's
enough.
your, Richard, what's your day-to-day like at IC Medical?
My day to day, wow. I mean, I wear a number of hats. I mean, we do, personally for me, I'm managing the US and international sales forces. So dealing with, our distribution points across the globe, as well as the domestic sales force. And then I handle most of the marketing activities. I have a fine team internally to handle the customer service and order entry aspects and elements. And then we do a lot of group purchasing organization contracts, price alignment margins, dealing with strategies and go to market strategies, things of that nature. So it's multifaceted to say the least and ever exciting, never a dull moment.
If you go to bed tonight, is there anything to keep you up? What challenges keep you up at night?
You know, work related. I'm assuming we're speaking strictly of work related. Uh, I mean, nothing keeps me up at night. I fall asleep very, very quickly. Within 60 seconds of my head hitting the pillow, I am literally out. And so nothing. There's really nothing to sweat. You give it all every day and you go to bed knowing you did your best.
That's right. Perfect. Now, for as far as the industry goes, how is MedTech evolving right now?
Wow. I mean, obviously everybody's talking about AI and automation, right? And that makes sense. How we integrate AI into surgical devices, that remains to be seen. I will say that the international landscape is moving more towards a minimally invasive surgical environment whenever possible. I know of certain countries where the predominantly laparoscopic and more so even robotic now, where the installations of robotic devices are going in everywhere, and that's becoming sort of the forte and the lead in when it comes um, to the surgical environment. I mean, in terms of med tech devices, surely it's a very competitive landscape. There's new devices going on all the time, and it's that constant rub. Many hospitals in the world now are operating in the red. I mean, you're talking more than 50% of the hospitals in some countries, even as much as 60, 70% of the hospitals are operating in the red. So, that's that constant, ever evolving, influx of, okay, we want safe surgery, but we need to make money. And then you got the private versus public sector debate that goes on in a lot of countries now too, is how much do we want the government to fund healthcare, to regulate healthcare, versus having it be more of a private sector. And so there's so many factors. That question is so loaded. I mean, you'd have to break down specific segments of that question and really break those down to really get into the meat of that to provide a thorough answer.
No problem. Next question I have, we just spoke about AI. Has AI made its way into your world yet? With the business, with IC Medical?
Well, not really. No, I don't think so. I think the short answer would be no. I mean, certainly we're doing some things on the supply chain end with implementing, EDI and other electronic communications to improve efficiencies and automation. But in terms of actual AI, like Chat GPT or other types of, I'm beginning to start to use some of that technology in writing and marketing just to kind of help things be more affluent, kind of trying to learn how I can leverage that technology to make my job more efficient. But other than that, I would say, at least to my knowledge, that's the limited scope of our interfacing with AI at the moment as a company.
Okay. So we're gonna go into what's working and what's not. What's going really well for IC Medical right now?
What's going really well, I think, certainly with the ever changing landscape with the tariffs due to our presidential administration and the trade wars with China, I think we're in a good position being the only made in USA supplier. I know at least four competitive products that are made in China that may have some issues, and so we believe we're positioned in a very well going forward. So I would say that's one. Some other things that are going really well. I mean, we are a diverse supplier. So not only are we 100% made in USA, Elena Cosmescu, Jan's wife, has sort of run as our senior president for many years, running the operations of the business. And so being a diverse supplier has certainly helped us, positionally, with an emphasis, at least in the United States, on working with diverse suppliers. I think some other things that are going well is we do some things on the filtration aspect as it relates to smoke evacuation that I believe keeps our equipment the only true and safe way to evacuate surgical smoke. And I don't necessarily want to get into all those elements here in this call, but there's some things that I discuss with our customers that I think are really the only safe and responsible way. Look, with smoke evacuation, and just like anything else, I mean, you take people who go to the gym to exercise. You can go in there and you can exercise and you can give it a very minimal effort, but you can check the box at the end of the day and appease your conscience. I did it, right? So there's
Right.
doing it, and then they're doing it to the best of your ability, or doing it right. And so what I think IC Medical can say, and what I can say working for this company, is that we're not just doing it and checking the box, but we're helping our customers do it right. And for those people who really have that passion to see what they're doing to the best of their ability, we can kind of help take their hand and lead them into the path of doing it right.
And at that point with the customers, how are you currently gathering feedback for them?
I mean, we do post-market surveillance, and voice of the customer, and I'm continuously working with our outside sales force and documenting, we just call it the voice of the customer, or VOC, and it's taken very seriously. I think the old adage in my years of selling, which I'm on what, my 33 years of sales, I've learned that the voice of the customer is everything, and for every instance you hear of an occurrence, that people who don't have that same sales savvy or same sales experience would easily chalk it up or like to say, well, we've never heard that before. But I would argue and stand on, for every complaint that you do hear, there's 10 more just like it that you'll never hear. So if you start to hear one or two occurrences, you can safely assume there's that's representative of a much larger number of complaints that never make it to your ears. So they need to be taken very, very seriously. And going to the market, it's natural to assume that you have the best product, but if the market, you can't find anybody to accept what you're doing as what they need, then you need to relook at that and say, okay, we need to re-strategize, realign ourselves to what the market's actually looking for. You can try to create a market, but if it doesn't work, again, listen to what they're saying, what they're actually looking for, find that acceptance. And then once you find that acceptance, what the market needs, and you've created that market through listening to the customer, curtail and hone in your product to be specifically what they need. Don't just build it and expect that everybody's going to come. Find out what they want to come to and build that.
Perfect. And Richard, so I have two last questions related to AI in the future. Are there any parts of the business screaming for automation right now?
Well, I think yes, because smoke evacuation pencils, as legislation and and the acceptance of the known hazard continues to increase, you have a commoditization of the product itself, which is going to lead to much higher volumes and a more competitive landscape. Everybody wants a piece of the pie, so the pie is getting bigger, but now you've got more competitors really honing in on scavenging for their portion. And as that happens, you have commoditization going on and price pressure. So, I mean, from an automation standpoint, I think the first thing I think of when you say that in this business is figuring out how to automate the production of the products to make them as cost effective as possible without compromising safety. And I think that's something that our company is doing well. We're always looking to automate the process just to drive price margin out of the product to keep it cost effective for the customer, that they can continue to use it. Again, you remember I said the hospitals are operating in the red, and now they go, well, now I've gone from a $4 pencil to, let's just say, a $20 pencil. So that's a 500% net increase in revenue per patient on that line item, and I've got to do it on all of my surgeries. So you have a hospital system that has 10 locations, and now that they're adding, a $500,000 a year or $750,000 a year or whatever the number happens to be to their budget. And where's that money going to come from? So again, us as the manufacturer, how can we drive out margins to keep that price, pared down as much as possible without, again, compromising quality? So that automation certainly contributes to that. That said, I have a feeling the nature of your question might have been a little bit different than the path I took that down. So if you want to make that question more specific.
Yeah, the specific question here is if AI could solve one thing for you, what would it be?
Wow, if AI could solve one thing, I don't even know that I'm equipped to answer that question. I
That's
don't.
okay.
Yeah, it's a very good question. It's something I'll think about.
Okay. No worries. Well, hey, Richard, that brings it close to our show. Welcome to Design and Thrive. We'd love to have you on the next show as well. That's it. Take care. See you guys.